So it's been almost a decade since the last Hunger Games movies were released, and all of us fans of the franchise were driven back to the theater in order to watch the newest installment in the series, which is actually a prequel set dozens of years before Katniss Everdeen was born in the new movies. And honestly, I'm really excited. As somebody who really grew up with these books, with the movies, I read them all before I saw the films. I enjoyed the films a lot. I recently rewatched them, and I was like basically one of the fans that was always like talking about the characters, their motivations in the past, like basically create like reading fanfics of the characters of Katniss, Peeta, Gale, and basically got into the whole thing. So I was really excited to talk about this movie, and I'm a little tardy to the party because it's been a month since it was released. I was a little busy, but now I'm ready to talk about this film because honestly, I really enjoyed it. I feel like this movie is really justified, and today I'm going to explain why. And also, before I saw the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I read the book. I really liked it. It was in my bookshelf basically for 3 years because I really wanted to read it. I wanted to read it. And I knew that if I didn't read it before the movie came out, I wouldn't just basically not do it ever. So honestly, I think I enjoyed the movie much more than the book. I feel like there were a lot of things in the movie that were not like as great in the book. There were like a lot of slow parts, but I feel like the film had a great pacing that continues the best of the story. And I saw it twice, so I really wanted to analyze and get into the motivation of the main character, which is Coriolanus Snow. As we all know, he's the villain in the main movies in the Hunger Games franchise. Like basically, he is a very evil character, and not only he's an evil character, but he's also a very complex character. Like he has very intense motivations, even though he's an evil dictator. And honestly, I feel like in the movie that is shown, like the kind of like the signs going to like his really extreme fascist state in the next movies. And the main topic I want to focus on is his relationship with the system that is established in the Hunger Games universe. So as we all know, this is a movie that's been set like in a world, in a dystopian setting where this society has been ravaged by war, it's been ravaged by hunger, people have been fighting for a long time. It's basically focusing on the relationship between the districts and the capital, and Coriolanus Snow has always identified himself with the capital. I feel like that is something very important to establish, is like he starts in a very difficult situation. His father was basically a soldier who died in the war, and beforehand we see a lot of like established things that make him change as a character, and that is something that has been shown in the beginning when he is shown as a kid with his cousin Tigris, and then continues over the course of the movie and the book, also while he is growing, while he's learning, trying to adapt to the system, because he's also from a very poor family. So he starts understanding like what his role in this world is, how he can like get forward, and also most importantly how to take care of his family. There's a lot of scenes that allude to his growing as a character and also his deterioration, which we basically see towards the end of the movie. Also, by the way, this discussion of the movie is going to have a lot of spoilers, so please keep in mind that if you haven't seen the movie, please skip ahead. But I feel like there's a lot of scenes, for example, like his conversations with Dr. Gull in both the book and the movie, which kind of like establish him as someone who's trying to learn how to take advantage of the system and how to basically use that to get ahead in his whole personal life. And as like I said before, he's trying also to help his family, for example, his cousin Tigris, his grandmam, as it's called in the movie and the book. I feel like one of his main motivations is to help them get ahead and to help them kind of like live a good life in this world, which is uncertain, which is basically dependent on the systems that hold this entire like really messed up structure in place. And that is very important because in the first and second chapter of the book, basically like the whole setup with his relationship with Lucy Gray, and basically like everything that leads to the scenes with the Hunger Games, which is basically like the main story in the movie, and then it continues in the third part, which is vastly different from the last previous two parts. I feel like there's a lot of moments that really make him reflect and also like kind of have this back and forth. For example, when he meets Lucy Gray, he understands that she is from the districts, like she's supposed to be an enemy, they're supposed to hate her. So when he starts falling for her, which also really happens, I feel like he did really fall for Lucy Gray. And that makes his character much more complex than we might think. And that is something very important because he did not just snap like this. I feel like there was a lot of things that really kept him in line, like kept him like growing throughout the movie. And then there's a lot of pushback, especially with his friend Sejanus, which is another topic that I'll discuss further because that is a very important thing to discuss. But in short, his relationship with Lucy Gray was very complicated because he knows that it is wrong to be in love with her. He knows like the system is not going to accept that. He knows that it's going to lead to a lot of trouble, and he still does it. And like to the point where he actually tries to go to District 12 in order to basically meet her, and even though he's breaking all the rules that he's supposed to follow in order to basically gain power, to lead a good life for his family, And that is something that really conflicts him. And that is something we also see with Sejanus. And Sejanus is a very interesting character because he's basically the complete opposite of the person that Snow becomes towards the end of the movie. So basically in the end of the movie, we see him like basically become this completely assimilated into the system person. And as we all know, like later in the story, he becomes the president. He basically becomes this person who is, in a certain way, he's dependent on the system, and the system is basically continued because of people like him who are like, okay, I just want to get ahead, and even though it's like, regardless if it's right and wrong, which is wrong, by the way, I feel like it is very important to note that, like, I'm not justifying his actions. I feel like the entire system in the capital, like oppressing the districts, is a really, really bad thing to have in this world. But in the context of Snow's situation, he knows that he has to do immoral things to get ahead. And that's what makes him a very complicated villain. And I really believe that he was a villain also during the events of the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which makes this story very interesting. I feel like not many people really focus on the intricacies of his character and why I think this story is very justified in the Hunger Games universe. So going back to Sejanus, he is one of the few people who really focus on the immorality of the Hunger Games. Basically, he from the beginning starts questioning the system.
Winning a war 10 years ago doesn't justify starving people's children. I don't see how making children fight each other to the death is protecting anyone.
He raises his voice against the oppressive nature of the capital, the inhumanity of the games of pitting people to fight against each other to the death. He's one of the people who kind of like doesn't care what people think about him. And that becomes really important later on when he is working in the districts as a peacekeeper. Because if you ask me, Sejanus is one of the most pure characters in this story. I feel like he always tried to do what's right, even though he might get into trouble, even though he might risk his life. And that is why he's one of my favorite characters in this prequel. Because no matter what happened, he always tried to stick to his ideals, which in this case were justified. And no matter what happened or what people might think about him. And obviously there's a lot of things to consider. For example, like, he comes from a very rich family. His privileges protect him from things from, like, for example, getting expelled from school, from having like real consequences. Besides the ending where he gets killed, obviously. Well, spoiler alert. Speaking about that scene, it shows just like the most important things about Snow and Sejanus's relationship. For example, after the scene where Sejanus gets like executed and Snow regrets his decision, he like has a very intense breakdown. I feel like those were genuine emotions, and that's what makes Snow a much more complex character than we might think. I feel like the events of this movie really stuck with him over the years and caused him to have a lot of regrets. I believe that these scenes are something that haunted him all those years while he became president, while he rose in power. And an example that alludes to that comes like during the end of the movie, where he basically starts his new life as back at the Capitol after Dean Longbottom dies. And there's a scene where Tigris like looks at him in a very strange way. And this is something that really makes me feel like it was the beginning of Tigris and Snow's falling apart. Because as we know in Mockingjay, the final book/movie of the series, we see Tigris Snow in a very different state. She basically is very alienated from Snow. And I feel like in a way she knew like what happened, like all the things he did in order to stay in power. And that is something that is not explicitly said either in the book and the movie, but it's something that is very obvious if you think about it. So anyways, those are most of my thoughts on why I think this movie is very justified and why Snow's character is very interesting. And yeah, I really enjoyed the movie. I think it was a great way to continue the series, to expand this universe. I wouldn't want this amazing series to become sort of like Star Wars with a million spin-offs of each character. But I feel like if with Suzanne Collins' approval, someday a new story like this one that is very justified gets made and gets written and made into a movie, it will make for a lot of great stories. I feel like this world is very complex, and the way she tells the story is so good. And yeah, that's basically all my thoughts on it. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments if you agree with me, if you disagree. I really like debating these things in movies and series. So anyways, that's what my channel is all about. So yeah, anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.